Don't blame your children for being indifferent. Dear fathers and mothers, dear grandfathers and grandmothers. Perhaps at this very moment, you are sitting alone in the silent space of your home, your eyes accidentally catching old family photos faded by the years. In those frames, how small our children used to be, how they used to cling to their parents. Those innocent faces were once our entire sky, the motivation for you to overcome countless storms in life. Yet, looking at the present reality, do you ever suddenly let out a deep sigh? Outside, life is still bustling, the streets crowded with people passing by. Our children are now grown. They too are caught in the whirlpool of work, social relationships, and a private life that sometimes has no room for us. You once exhausted all your strength, spending your entire youth to build a foundation for them. So why is it that when they are fully fledged, this house, which was once filled with laughter, has now become so vast and cold that it makes one's heart freeze? Try to imagine a late afternoon when the sun in the yard has gone out. On the table, the meal you prepared with your own hands has long since turned cold. You sit there, eyes fixed on the gate, ears keenly listening to every motorcycle engine passing through the alley. Deep inside, you secretly hope, secretly long for that sound to stop in front of your door, for that to be your dear child returning. But then, that sound just fades away, vanishing into space, leaving only the dry ticking of the wall clock. A sense of emptiness rushes in. You ask yourself, what did I do wrong? Where did I go wrong in teaching my child? You spent your whole life, from the time your hair was green until it turned white, depriving yourself of food and clothes, staying up late and waking up early to care for every bite and sleep, nurturing every schoolbook for your child. So why is it that now, in the sunset of your life, just a sincere word of inquiry, a warm handshake, or simply a meal together has become such a luxury and difficulty? Is it possible that, deep in your heart, you feel like an extra person, an old shadow in the very house you used toiled with your own blood and bone to build? That feeling is very painful. It is not the stinging of a wound on the skin, but a tightening pain in the chest when seeing the sacrifice of a lifetime seemingly forgotten. We often tend to blame our children for being so indifferent, so unfilial, and ask why they only know how to live for themselves. But dear viewers, if we look from the perspective of Buddhism and the law of cause and effect, we will realize that every meeting or parting in this world is not a coincidence. The indifference of children, the coldness that you are secretly enduring, sometimes does not stem from them being evil-minded. In fact, there is an invisible thread of karmic debt, woven from many past lives, that is manifesting in this current reality. There are children who come to us to repay kindness and gratitude, but there are also children who come only to collect a debt. When you thoroughly understand this principle, you will feel your heart lighten significantly. We understand to resolve, to stop blaming, so that the final stage of life no longer has to be soaked in tears of lonely sorrow. Dear friends, if you are carrying those heavy concerns, please stay with me. In this video, we are not just sitting here to recount pain, but we will together peel back each deep layer of cause and effect. We will see together that every tear flowing back into the heart today has its own deep root cause. And most importantly, we will learn how to transform those sorrows into blessings, so that the elderly years truly become the most peaceful and autonomous days of a human life. I know very well that there are times you pick up the phone, your finger has touched the child's name in the contacts, but then you hesitate and stop. You are afraid. Afraid the child is busy working, afraid the child will be irritable, afraid to hear that hurried, indifferent tone. I'm busy in a meeting, Mom. Do you have anything important to call about? That question, is there anything important, really feels like a knife cutting into the heart. Is it true that between parents and children, only when there is a major issue, when one is sick, or when one needs money, does one have the right to call each other? Just because of missing the child's voice, just wanting to ask if the child ate well today, why has it become so difficult and heavy? Then there are fathers and mothers who live for an entire long year just to wait for Tet or holidays to see their children reunite. You busily prepare, going to the market to choose each delicious dish the child likes, cleaning the house until it's spotless. Yet, at the very last minute, that hope suddenly shatters because of a dry text message. This year I'm busy traveling with the company, or, there is work at the maternal side, we can't come back. Who can fully understand that sense of disappointment and instability for you? You silently put the prepared food back into the refrigerator, your heart heavy as if weighed down by stones, and then the two old folks once again sit alone looking at each other in the empty house. Even more heartbreaking is the scene of living under the same roof but being no different from strangers. The children come home from work and walk straight into their private rooms, slamming the door shut, eyes glued to the phone screen without looking at their parents even once. If you want to start a conversation or say a few words of inquiry, the child brushes it off. Parents are old. What do you know about modern matters to speak? Or, our business. Parents shouldn't interfere. It's tiring. Those words are like a bucket of cold water thrown straight into the hearts of those who once steered the whole family through countless rapids and storms. Ancestors had a saying, parents raise children like the vast sky and sea. Children raise parents by counting the months and days. That saying is so bitter, yet so painfully true. When a child is small, just a sneeze or a runny nose is enough for parents to lose sleep all night, ready to sell all assets and do anything to cure the child. Yet when parents are old and weak, the children begin to sit and calculate, who will take care? How to divide the schedule fairly? Which child contributes how much money? That petty calculation is the clearest evidence of the indifference that exists. But dear friends, please calm down a bit. I understand the pain you are carrying. I know you feel a lot of injustice and pity. But if we keep letting ourselves drown forever in blame, the one who suffers the most is still only us. This empathy I offer is not for us to cry together, but to look directly at the truth. The indifference of children is a reality of this era, and in a certain aspect, it is a part of the karmic outcome that we are forced to face. Look for yourselves. Why are there families where, despite poverty, the children are unfilially pious and love their parents wholeheartedly? Yet there are wealthy families where the children are highly educated but treat their parents no better than strangers? That is the reflection of the law of cause and effect. It is possible that in some hidden corner of the timeline from past lives, we once sowed seeds for which we are reaping the fruits today. Saying this is not for you to blame yourselves, but for you to understand that everything happens for a reason. Let your heart be soothed by deep understanding, by the tolerance of one who has tasted enough of the bitterness and sweetness of life. Do not let the actions or attitudes of your children define your self-worth and happiness anymore. Now, let us go deeper into the first type of debt, a type of debt that perhaps many people are encountering but have not been able to name accurately. That is material debt. In Buddhist teachings, there are children reincarnated to parents not to practice filial piety, but to collect a debt, to reclaim financial amounts or assets that we perhaps owed them from past lives. Do you find this image familiar? A child who is grown, has their own family, but still views parents as an interest-free bank, a place to withdraw from indefinitely. They only return when in deep debt, when wanting to change houses, buy luxury cars, or when failing in business. When they have money in hand, they are preoccupied with traveling and luxurious dining with friends, but when in need, the first person they think of is the elderly parent with a meager pension or a bit of old age savings. They do not hesitate to use words of begging or even coercion to force parents to sell the land intended for self-protection, or sell the house full of memories just to pay off their debts. Why is there such an absurd strangeness? Why do parents, even knowing the child is destructive, still want to give, knowing that even after giving, the child will squander it all? That is the power of the karmic thread. It is possible that in a past life, you once possessed someone else's property or owed them a sum of money that you had not yet paid off fairly. In this life, they become your child to reclaim what originally belonged to them. That is the reason why you always feel indebted to the child, always feel restless and uneasy if you cannot help them, even though that child treats you poorly. The indifference at this point is very clearly manifested. The child considers the sacrifice of money from parents as something obvious, a truth. They do not have a bit of gratitude. On the contrary, they consider it an unavoidable duty of the parents. Parents have money, so they must take care of their children. Later, when parents pass away, that money belongs to the children anyway. Such cold and unintentional words are enough to knock down even the strongest father. But look a bit wider. Why is it that the more money you give a child, the more destructive the child becomes? Why is it that when you meet every material demand, that child becomes more overbearing and ungrateful? Dear friends, it is because we are helping them collect a debt, but unintentionally sowing bad karma. When you indulge material needs blindly, you have unintentionally deprived them of the ability to be independent and lost the virtue of gratitude inherent in a human being. From the perspective of cause and effect, if this is a material debt, The resolution is never giving money indiscriminately. Every cent you give without education, without necessary boundaries, is not a blessing for the child, but is sowing disaster for them. You are trying to use money to buy the presence of the child, to buy temporary satisfaction from them, but in reality, you are nurturing an increasingly greedy debtor right in your own home. Awaken and realize a truth. Money can never buy sincere filial piety from the heart. If that child came only because of debt, then when you no longer have money, the debt is considered paid, and they will also leave. That is a harsh truth, but we need to face it courageously. When you understand material debt, stop agonizing yourself. Never blame yourself as a bad father or mother just because you don't have money to give the child anymore. Understand that you have fully completed your duty, and now is the time for that child to carry the karmic outcome of their own life. After thoroughly understanding the pain and identifying this first type of debt, many of you will surely ask, so what should I do now? Must I just sit here and endure the loneliness and indifference of my children forever? Dear friends, the answer is encapsulated in just 2 words: change. But please remember, change here is not about trying to change the personality of the child, but about changing yourself. This is truly the most important turning point for you to change the fortune of your old age. We often make a very big mistake, which is placing all our happiness and the meaning of our life in the hands of our children. We consider the child our entire sky, the only reason to exist. To then when the child is indifferent, that whole sky collapses completely, and you feel your life has no value left. Try to remember, how long has it been since you bought yourself a new set of clothes just because you wanted to save money for your child? How long has it been since you went traveling or met friends because you were afraid of the expense, only to then spend that very money on the child's unreasonable demands? The first small step of change that I earnestly hope you will implement today is to learn how to create joy for yourself. Don't sit there waiting wearily for a phone call from your child to feel that you are still cared for. If the child doesn't call, pick up the phone yourself and call an old friend or a former colleague. If the child doesn't come home for dinner, cook yourself a very delicious dish, present it beautifully, and enjoy it in serenity and gentleness. Bring into your life a very beautiful concept: self-generated blessings. This blessing is completely independent of whether the children are filial or not. It comes from the way you treat yourself. Old age is the time you need to return to care for your own temple, that is physical health and the beauty of the soul. Join a health club, walk in the park, learn how to meditate, or simply spend time reading books about morality and how to live peacefully. When you begin to be busy with self-generated joys, you will see a miracle happen. The pressure you unintentionally placed on your children's shoulders, the pressure to make parents happy, will naturally disappear. And strangely, when you no longer cling psychologically to the children, they feel more comfortable and natural when being close to you. Changing your mindset also means stopping the blame. Instead of complaining, "Because of you, I am so miserable," tell yourself, "This is my karma, and I will transform it myself." When you courageously take responsibility for your own emotions, you will become the master of your life once again. You are no longer a weak victim of indifference, but become an elderly person full of wisdom and autonomy. Always remember that the greatest blessing in old age is not that your children are incredibly wealthy, but that your heart can be calm before all the fluctuations of life. If you still have health and mental clarity, that is already a priceless gift bestowed by heaven and earth. Don't be foolish and trade that gift for sorrows over an undeserving person, even if that is your own biological child. Start with the smallest things. Smile at yourself in the mirror every morning, water a flower yourself, or help a neighbor. Blessings will sprout and grow from those small actions. To give you a clearer and more authentic view, I would like to tell you the story of Mrs. Wah, a woman I had the opportunity to talk with for a long time. Her story is the most vivid proof of the power of changing mindset and understanding the law of cause and effect. Mrs. Wah had an only son named Nam. In the past, she was very proud of Nam because he was a good student, successful, and had a high position in society. To care for her son's future, she did not hesitate to sell the entire ancestral house in the countryside, giving Nam a large portion of the money to buy a high-end apartment in the city. For her part, she moved in with his family to help care for the grandchildren, thinking that was the start of a fulfilling, peaceful old age. However, the reality was unexpectedly bitter. When living together, she was shocked to realize she was no different from an unpaid maid. Her son was busy all day. When he came home, he was tired, never saying a word of inquiry to warm her heart. The daughter-in-law was strict, always criticizing her for being old-fashioned and saying her way of caring for the grandchildren was unscientific. There were family meals where she sat there, but the husband, wife, and children only busied themselves talking in English about company matters that she couldn't understand a word of. She felt out of place like a stranger in the very house she had contributed money to buy. The climax was when Nam said a heart-wrenching sentence to her. "Mom, don't interfere deeply in our way of teaching our children anymore. Maybe you should go back to the countryside for a while to clear your head." Mrs. Wah cried all her tears out of humiliation. She felt hatred for her son, felt she was being exploited by him and then discarded like an old item of no more value. She intended to return to the countryside in extreme resentment. But right at that moment, she was lucky to meet a teacher and was told about the principle of debt and affinity. The teacher gently told her, "Your son is perhaps collecting a debt from you, or you are having to pay a debt to him. If you leave carrying resentment, this debt will haunt you forever. Leave in peace and secretly wish him well." Mrs. Wah listened and decided to return to the countryside. Instead of sitting at home feeling sorry for herself, she used the little savings she had left to renovate the old house in the countryside. She began going to the temple and diligently attending Dharma talks. She joined the elderly association in the commune, planting flowers with the women in the neighborhood and cleaning village roads. She no longer called Nam to blame or complain. Every time her son called, she gently said, "I am very healthy and happy in the countryside. You children can rest assured and work." And then, a miracle truly happened. When she was no longer a psychological burden for Nam, when she no longer demanded his attention, Nam suddenly began to feel the absence of his mother. He began to miss the simple meals she cooked, miss her gentleness and tolerance. Every time he returned to the countryside, seeing his mother radiant, healthy, and loved by everyone around her, Nam began to feel ashamed of what he had done. One day, Nam returned to the countryside, knelt before her and said through tears, "I'm sorry, Mom, for a long time I have been too indifferent, too terrible to you. Don't you see, that knot that seemed impossible to untie was loosened not by argument, but by letting go." When Mrs. Hoa's heart was at peace, the magnetic field around her changed, and it reacted back, awakening the child. Mrs. Hoa's story is not an illusory miracle, but the extremely precise operation of cause and effect. When you stop sowing the cause of resentment, the fruit of peace will surely blossom. Beside the material debt we just analyzed, life also has two deeper types of debt, harder to identify but causing more subtle and lingering pain. That is emotional debt and karmic debt. The second type of debt, emotional debt. This is the type of debt arising from the very shortcomings and misalignments in affection between parents and children. Have you ever asked yourself why your children treat you so coldly? Sometimes, cause and effect lie right in this very life of ours. Perhaps when the child was small, because you were busy making a living or because of life pressures, you were too strict or unintentionally neglected the child's emotions. You could give the child plenty of money and a proper education, but lacked warm hugs and words of encouragement. That child grew up with a vast, empty space in their soul, and in old age, they treat you exactly according to the way they felt during childhood, with coldness and distance. In cause and effect, this is the most honest reflection. You reap what you sow. If you once sowed authoritarianism and imposition, you will reap estrangement. However, there are also cases of emotional debt from distant past lives. In a past life, this child might have been a relative or someone you owed kindness to, but you betrayed them or treated them poorly. In this life, they become your child so that you must exhaust yourself providing for and sacrificing for them without receiving a worthy reward. This is the way for you to pay back the kindness debt you borrowed previously. The third type of debt, karmic debt. This can be considered the heaviest and most arduous type of debt. There are children born with defects, or with rebellious, destructive personalities, bringing parents countless scandals and perpetual suffering. They are like true enemies present in life. Under the perspective of Buddhism, this is exactly the lesson of the greatest endurance at the end of life. These children come to you to test the limits of your tolerance and altruism. They force you to seek the path of spiritual practice, to seek spirituality to liberate yourself from the sea of suffering. If not for that rebellious child, perhaps you would still be preoccupied with worldly pursuits, never knowing how to turn inward to cultivate your body and mind. Therefore, from a deeper perspective, that child is exactly an adversely acting bodhisattva who comes to help you complete the harsh final lessons of a human life. So how to recognize them through daily attitudes? If a child only seeks you out every time they need money, that is exactly material debt. If a child is successful and sufficient but cold, never wanting to confide or be close, that is emotional debt. If a child is always causing trouble, forcing parents to worry, suffer, and be humiliated for a lifetime, that is karmic debt. Understanding these things clearly is absolutely not for you to give up or leave things to fate, but so that you can have a more tolerant and insightful view. When you understand that, it turns out I'm paying a debt, then you will pay that debt in a voluntary mindset, no longer blaming or being resentful. And when the debt is fully paid, family relationships will automatically become better, or at least, your soul will no longer be in pain or shattered because of the child's actions. You will realize that every child is a messenger bringing you some invaluable lesson. Accept that lesson with deep gratitude instead of ordinary anger. Dear friends, after we have gone through the pains together, looked through the somewhat harsh realities, and clearly understood the types of karmic debt, now is the time for us to find the way back to the true harbor of peace. How can we resolve all these knots of grievance? How can we ensure the final years of life are no longer deep sighs? The Buddha once taught us about the two words, following conditions. In this life, children coming to us is affinity, their staying with us is affinity, and their leaving or treating us poorly is also affinity. Our biggest and most common mistake is forced pursuit. We always want our children to live exactly according to our wishes, wanting them to practice filial piety in the way we expect. It is that very selfish expectation that is the iron chain binding your soul into the prison of suffering. When you truly let go of expectation, you will see blessings appear immediately. Blessing in old age does not lie in how much money your children bring back, or whether they visit frequently. True blessing is when you can sit alone in an empty room and yet your heart is as peaceful and autonomous as if standing in a quiet forest of meditation. Blessing is when you look at your indifferent child with eyes full of compassion, pitying because you know they are sowing bad causes for their own future, instead of looking at them with eyes of burning resentment. Start practicing dedicating merit every day. Every time you do even the smallest good deed, or simply every time you maintain a calm mindset without getting angry at a child's disrespectful word, put your hands together and secretly pray, I dedicate all this merit to my children. May they be awakened, live in the right dharma, and find peace. This is the most wise and effective way to pay the debt. You are using wholesome energy to resolve old grievances, instead of using arguments to stack up even heavier new karma. The final stage of each human life is like a brilliant sunset. Whether that sunset is beautiful or glorious depends entirely on whether your mind's sky is covered by dark clouds. Those dark clouds are nothing but resentment and excessive attachment to children. Let those clouds vanish. Learn to live like a noble lotus flower, rising from the mud of family pains but still radiating the fragrance of tolerance and immense autonomy. Never utter words such as, I am meritless, so my children treat me like this. You still have great merit when today you still hear these Dharma words, when you still have the precious opportunity to cultivate yourself. Remember, the ultimate goal of a human life is not to possess perfect children according to one's wishes, but to train a perfect soul. The indifference of children is actually the precious, raw material for you to temper yourself. When your heart no longer ripples before cold indifference, that is when you have reached the highest state of liberation right in this ordinary life. We have gone through a long journey of both emotion and wisdom. A human life truly passes as fast as a galloping horse past a window. In just a blink of an eye, we find ourselves standing on the other side of the slope of life. There have been tears shed, there have been deep pains carved into nameless scars. But dear friends, tears flowing downward is the eternal law of nature. Please do not let those tears cloud your pure and kind heart. Children may be indifferent, but heaven, earth, and the law of cause and effect are never indifferent. Every act of endurance, every heart of vast tolerance of yours is carefully recorded in the treasury of your own merit. When the time comes for you to leave this world, you will not carry with you the money the child gave, nor will you carry their outward filial piety. The only thing you can carry is the mind that has been washed clean of all resentment and hatred. Promise me one thing. After you turn off this video, you will stand up, wash your face clean with cool water, look in the mirror, and smile brightly at yourself. Start a new day, or a very gentle and peaceful evening. If the child calls home, receive it happily with love. If the child doesn't call, continue to love and care for yourself. Let the child's indifference be a valuable lesson for their own journey. Absolutely do not let it become a sentence of suffering for your life. Before closing today's intimate conversation, I would like to send wishes for peace, health, and wisdom to all of you. May every father and mother listening to these words find the light of truth in their own souls, so that the final stage of your life is always filled with blessings, serenity, and peace. If you feel this video has somewhat soothed the hidden concerns in your heart, or if you want to spread this positive energy to other elderly friends who are encountering similar circumstances, please perform a small but immensely meaningful action. Please leave a comment right below this video, praying for peace for my family, so that we all together create a powerful field of wholesome energy to help resolve old karmic grievances from long ago. And don't forget to press the subscribe button along with the small bell icon so you don't miss any upcoming lessons on cause and effect and the feng shui of life. We will always be here, standing by and accompanying you on the path back to true peace. Goodbye and see you in the next videos. Wishing you a life of peace and autonomy.